Early in AD 260, near Edessa in Osroene, the Roman Empire gathers one of the last major field armies it can still assemble in the east. Emperor Valerian is there with tens of thousands of men. Some estimates put the force near 70,000, concentrated along the main route between Syria and Mesopotamia. It's a formidable army, but it's already worn down. Months of marching along the middle Euphrates have taken their toll, and everything depends on a supply line stretching hundreds of miles. Worse, an epidemic tears through the camps, often associated with the plague of Cyprian, killing without battle not only soldiers, but also pack animals and the workers who keep the convoys moving. Day by day, the army thins. Facing them is Shapur I and the Sasanian army, more maneuverable, with heavy cavalry and horse archers able to strike fast at the enemy's weak points. Edessa isn't an imperial capital, it's a hinge point. If it falls, Persian pressure rolls straight into Syria. If it holds, Rome's eastern defenses stay connected. And here, something happens that had never happened before in Roman history. Valerian, a reigning Augustus, is taken alive and held prisoner by a foreign enemy. He isn't killed in battle. He isn't overthrown by his men. He isn't assassinated in Rome. Nothing like it will happen again to a reigning emperor of imperial Rome. How was it possible, and what happened next? By late 259, the Eastern Front isn't just another border. It's where Rome risks losing nearly 6 decades of hard-won ground beyond the Euphrates. Since the days of Septimus Severus, the empire hasn't merely guarded the river, it has built a bridgehead in Mesopotamia, anchored by fortress cities like Nisblis, Sangara, and Carrhae. Even Osroene, once a client kingdom, has only recently been turned into a Roman province. It's a recent conquest, fragile and never fully absorbed. The heart of the system is Antioch on the Orontes, not a minor provincial capital, but a metropolis of hundreds of thousands, one of the empire's great cities and the seat of Eastern military command. Men, money, and grain converge here. From Antioch, orders and supplies move along the main Euphrates supply route. If Antioch holds, the East holds. If the logistical chain linking Antioch to Mesopotamia breaks, the defense collapses. On the ground, 6 or 7 legions operate, around 30,000 to 35,000 legionnaires, supported by at least as many auxiliaries, Syrian archers, cavalry, and light infantry. Units like Legio III Gallica, veterans of Eastern warfare, are among them, along with the so-called Parthian legions stationed beyond the river. River flotillas and transport craft on the Euphrates help move men and supplies, but they aren't enough on their own to stop a major Persian offensive. And Edessa sits near the center of it all, a key crossroads roughly 185 miles from Antioch, where the Roman world meets the interior of Mesopotamia. Shapur is targeting this entire structure. Valerian understands the logic. If he doesn't stop the Persians along the Antioch-Euphrates-Osroene route, the frontier cities become weak links. Strategically, he has no choice.
Did you know that most people who watch our documentaries aren't subscribed yet? If you enjoy animated maps and history, join our community. Leave a like and subscribe so you never miss the next episodes.
Valerian moves because the warning signs in the east have been building for years. Sasanian offensives have already struck deep. Antioch itself has been threatened and even sacked. Then, in 259, reports come in of new pressure on the fortress belt of Mesopotamia and Osroene. If the enemy breaks into the corridor between the Euphrates and the uplands, the frontier won't hold. Valerian's goal is straightforward: concentrate an army, protect the major Euphrates crossings, and keep Shapur from choosing the time and place of battle at will. The line he has to defend runs from Syria to the river crossings, fords and pontoon bridges around places like Zuguma and Samosata, then bends northeast towards Ostroene and Edessa. This is where war becomes logistics. Even without a precise headcount, we're talking about tens of thousands of men. Each soldier needs roughly 2 pounds of grain a day. Multiply that across an army of 50,000, and you're moving something like 50 tons of grain every single day. And that's before you feed the horses and pack animals. You won't carry weeks' worth of supplies on wagons. You depend on depots, requisitioning, and towns along the route. If one link fails, the army slows. And a slow army on this front is a vulnerable army. The sources don't let us reconstruct every step of the march, but one thing is clear: disease is eating into the force. In these same years, the empire is hit by the epidemic known as the Plague of Cyprian, and it very likely affects Valerian's army as well. Fevers thin the ranks, sap strength, and slow movement. Under those conditions, the Roman army marches toward its showdown. When Valerian enters Edessa in 260, he faces Shapur I, the ruler who has turned the Sassanians into a true imperial power. Shapur follows Ardashir I, founder of the dynasty, first as co-ruler around 240, then as sole king from 242. By 260, he has been on the throne for close to 2 decades. His ambition is clear: secure Sasanian Mesopotamia and press the frontier west, claiming the title King of Kings, not just over Iran, but over conquered lands as well. Rome has already paid for that strategy. In earlier years, Shapur inflicted major defeats along the Euphrates, at places like Barbalissos, and struck important cities, including Antioch itself, deep inside Syria. In 256, Dira Europos falls, not just a fortress lost, but proof that Rome's system on the Middle Euphrates can be broken. Edessa, in Ostroene, is where Valerian tries to halt the Sassanian advance, at the edge of Rome's Mesopotamian bridgehead. The sources don't all agree on the decisive moment. Some describe a battle lost, others negotiations that went badly. But the outcome is certain. Valerian is captured alive and taken into captivity along with members of his staff. Shapur makes the moment public. He boasts of it in a celebratory inscription and immortalizes it in monumental art. The king on horseback, the Roman emperor helpless. The consequences are immediate. The Eastern Command is suddenly leaderless. The war goes on, but for the first time in Roman history, a reigning emperor cannot lead it because he is the enemy's prisoner. After Edessa, Valerian doesn't disappear. He is alive, but he is in the enemy's hands. Shapur takes him deep into Sassanian territory as a political trophy, proclaimed in inscriptions and depicted in monumental art. Along with the emperor, thousands of Romans, soldiers, technicians, and craftsmen are deported and used as forced labor. For Shapur, Edessa isn't only a battlefield victory. It's also a capture of manpower and expertise. That's why the blow is so devastating for Rome. It loses an emperor, an army, and critical skills all at once. In the West, Gallienus remains in power, but he can't simply march east to replace his father. Between northern Italy, the Rhine, and the Danube, the frontiers are stretched to the breaking point. In that vacuum, a new power emerges on the Rhine. In Lower Germany, the troops proclaim Postumus. The spark is a clash with Germanic raiders and a dispute over loot claimed by Caesar Salinius and his circle at Colonia Agrippina. The soldiers answer in the usual way. They choose a commander in the field. Postumus marches on Cologne. Salonius is killed. Within weeks, Gaul and long stretches of the Rhine frontier fall under a separate authority, one that works because it pays, defends, and decides on the spot. In the east, the vacuum produces another emergency regime. Macrianus and his sons emerge between Syria and Asia Minor, trying to return crisis command into a rival imperial alternative. It's fragile. One son, Quietus, stays in Syria. The other, along with Macrianus himself, tries to push west. But the response comes from the people who actually control the ground. And that is where Odenathus of Palmyra steps in. Palmyra, an oasis city between inland Syria and the Euphrates, has cavalry, wealth, and local networks. Odenathus drives the Persians back, crushes the eastern usurpation, and for now becomes the backbone of Rome's defense in the east, pushing deep into Mesopotamia. From 262 onward, the empire's fragmentation hardens. On the Rhine, Postumus doesn't behave like a barbarian invader. He builds a breakaway Roman state using Roman tools. He rules from cities like Colonia Agrippina and, above all, Augusta Treverorum, Trier. He holds the frontier, mints coins, and builds his own administration. The choice is brutal but practical. He doesn't march on Rome because his legitimacy comes from the frontier and from pay. As long as he defends Gaul and the Rhine, his men follow. In the east, Odenathus does what Rome can no longer do directly. After settling accounts with Marcianus and his sons, he carries the war beyond the Euphrates. Between 262 and 263, he pushes forward and reaches the vicinity of Ctesiphon, enough to reverse the Sasanian momentum and turn Palmyra into the linchpin of Rome's defense in the east. Between those two poles stands Gallienus, facing a different problem: keeping Italy intact while the mobile frontiers consume resources. His focus shifts more on northern Italy, because from there he can react fast, whether the next emergency is a raid on the Rhine or a crisis on the Danube. In these years, Rome increasingly relies on a mobile reserve, especially cavalry that can race to whichever border is breaking. But the pressure doesn't cease. The Danube keeps producing emergencies, and the eastern Mediterranean sees new raids. Then, in 268, instability reaches the heart of the system. General Aureolus, one of the most important commanders in Gallienus's war machine, rebels in northern Italy. Gallienus lays siege to him at Mediolanum, and there, in camp, the emperor is assassinated. The lesson is grim. Once the empire splits into rival power centers, even Italy becomes a battlefield. And when Gallienus falls, who deserves power? Who can seize it without losing the Rhine, the Danube, and the East in the same year? In 268, after Gallienus is killed during the siege of Mediolanum, Danubian troops in northern Italy proclaim Claudius II emperor. The first priority is to end the civil conflict. Aureolus, barricaded in Milan, surrenders and is executed. But Claudius can't stay in Italy. The real crisis is already back on the Danube. In 269, the biggest threat of this phase arrives. A large Gothic and Scythian coalition pushes towards the Balkans, partly over land and partly by sea, from the Black Sea into the Aegean. Ancient sources give enormous numbers, almost certainly exaggerated. Thousands of ships. Hundreds of thousands of men.
Onward to Thrace! Let the Romans tremble!
What matters is the outcome. Thrace and Macedonia are overrun. Cities like Thessalonica are threatened, and Rome has to decide where to concentrate its forces. Claudius marches into Moesia. The decisive clash takes place near Naissus, today's Nice, along the route that links the lower Danube to the Balkan interior. The Roman victory is major and costly. The Gothic groups are shattered, but the aftermath creates a problem Rome struggles to manage. Survivors scatter, and huge numbers of prisoners and refugees keep moving through the region in search of food. Claudius earns the title Gothicus, but the empire doesn't regain stability. The crisis accelerates. In 270, Claudius dies, likely in the same epidemic climate. Quintillus is briefly recognized in Rome, but the Danube army chooses Aurelian. Within weeks, Quintillus is left without troops. Some sources say his soldiers kill him, others say he commits suicide. Either way, it's over almost immediately. The point isn't a twist, it's the rule. In an empire fighting on multiple fronts, succession doesn't wait for Rome. It's decided where the armies are. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. We'll see how the empire tries to recover after Edessa through Claudius Gothicus, Aurelian, and the illusion of stability.